Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you all for your time. A few words about myself, and then instead of presentations and whatever, I'll just show you the system. Feel free to ask me questions, throughout. Don't make it boring for me and let me just talk for 15, 20 minutes without answering anything. So my background is a Homeland Security background. I used to work after serving in the IDF. I worked for Israel Airport Authority and afterwards for El Al, Israel Airlines. I've served in several stations around the world, and in the last position, I was in charge of the Academy for Training Security Personnel. I've dealt with preparing procedures and management of crisis and preparation for crisis. I've worked with the Singaporean government. I've worked with IATA, the International Air Transport Association, and different entities around the world. We started working on this product, Be Strategic. The idea came up a little more than 4 years ago as part of preparation for crisis, working with several of our clients, and the way they were carrying out tabletop exercises. We became convinced that, I don't want to say old-fashioned way, the traditional way of carrying out these tabletops with having people sit around the table and just asking them, what do you do? What do you do? Maybe putting up a video on the screen so everyone feels excited, wasn't serving its purpose. People were doing it more for compliance and less for performance-based needs. And therefore, they were not really measuring the real behavior or how they would really act during a crisis. It was more, what would you do? What would you do? No of data, no capability to compare one event to another. It was more like outdoor training. Everyone enjoyed themselves because it's fun. There's a lot of sandwiches and drinks on the table, and people talk to each other. In many countries, people listen to what the boss is saying and they just say the same thing. Where I come from, Israel, it's the opposite. The boss says something and everyone says the opposite. But there was no real discussion on how we could get better because there was no way to compare or collect the data. So with that in mind, I decided to create a system that one would be virtual. This was long before Corona, that people could connect from wherever they were. You didn't have to bring them in the same room, so there would be no ego arguments. Virtual would enable us to immerse them within the event itself through videos, live feed, and so on and so forth, but also to measure their behaviors while they were managing an event. And this would enable us to create a matrix, which is a real behavior. This is how you behave. These are the people who are really making decisions. These are the people they're talking to. This is the level of stress you're under. These are the words that you're using. And we would be able to compare that to what they should have been doing. And I'll show you in a second how we know what they should have been doing. The system started working or running in August 2018. Up until COVID-19, we were very strong in the aviation industry, which I don't know if you know, but there is no such thing since March 2020. The industry is just starting to get back on its feet. We work in different sectors, from tactical simulations of an active shooter or workplace violence with organizations, especially in the United States, as you would imagine, and up to civil disturbances and natural hazard events. We've dealt with safety, security, branding events, whatever the organization decides is its crisis. And the capability to see and allow different sectors to work with our system is because we built it in an open fashion or open mode, so you could insert whatever you would want in it. Saying all of that is theoretical. I'm going to share my screen now and show you how it works. I'm going to show our user interface, the existing one, and I also show you a little how it's going to look in the next few months as we start bringing in new clients. We still have issues we're discussing with different clients because we see different age groups are reacting differently to different user interfaces. So we're also examining how and when we will unfold our new user interface. So let's share. I'm going to share the screen now. So we should be seeing, and you should be seeing my screen by now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what we have here is I'm showing you a demo that was built for a client. So I'll also be able to show real data later of a simulation that was built for a client. This is more cyber related. It's built on the GDPR regulations, as you all well know, in Europe. That's why it's called the critical 72 hours, based on the 72 hours of reaction once a breach is known to the organization. What this company has done, I've cleaned out all distinguishing marks. So they created their game goal and their game objectives at the beginning. And the first stage is not related to the simulation. What they do, what the organization does, or what we do in the system, we insert all the stakeholders that are involved in this process. So we have from the CEO, spokesperson, CISO, we have the attacker himself, a chairman of the board, even a media director, IT vendor, the authorities, anyone that could be involved in this type of event, including civilians, bloggers, whoever. And that allows us in each simulation to decide who is really going to participate. You can see those with the V's on the left, and those with the V's on the right will be managed through the game controller. So there will be someone that will be managing the simulation. Once the organization knows everyone that's going to participate, the organization is able to upload its expected process. Now, expected process can be its existing procedure, its existing protocol, a regulatory process that was mandated by the government, or just how they think they would behave. And we upload it in a swim lane chart manner. On the left-hand side, we have the stakeholders. Those in light gray are really going to play, and in dark blue, they're represented. And at the top, we have a timeline. Timeline can be each phase here, each block can be have a different minutes or seconds or whatever. And what we have here is how each stakeholder is expected to react or behave once they have information. So if, for instance, the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, receives information from the daughter company that there is a problem, what are they expected to do? Who are they expected to talk to? What should they be doing? And slowly we see an unfolding of the process within the swim lane chart. When there should be a decision made, here we have a decision that should be made at this point by the CISO. He should be giving this information to the following stakeholders, and that saying that he is establishing a task force, for instance. This allows the organization pre-simulation. This is their whole, by the way, expected process. You can see there are different colors because each one can be an event. For instance, in this process, the client has chapters within their procedure: the potential cyber attack, the media attention, the cyber attack itself, mediation, and even an earthquake should it happen. So again, we do not judge. We allow whatever chapters that exist in the procedure be inserted. Once this is uploaded, the system automatically starts analyzing the process. The system, first of all, shows us in each point in time who is making decisions. Every point there is a decision. So here it tells the CISO is supposed to make a decision, and in order for him to make that decision, he will receive 3 pieces of information from 3 different players. So on one hand, the system tells us, okay, these are your decision makers after mapping this out, saying the CISO, the CEO, and so on and so forth, but also telling us who are the common denominators. Because if the CEO has to make one decision and the CISO has to make one decision, but the common denominator is me, Dotan, then I am one of the most influential people within the organization, and maybe the organization doesn't know it because the organization focus on decision makers and not on the people that have to provide them with information in order for them to make decisions. A lot of organizations are surprised at this stage how much of their decisions are influenced by people that do not belong in the organization or not in their departments. It can be that one person, that's been working in the organization for 50 years and is sitting near the water cooler and no one talks to them. Or it's maybe a supplier and you didn't know that you rely so much on your supplier. The second thing that we do is we analyze all the interactions, the expected interactions. This is a real procedure that was built by a real client. But because they built such a long and heavy procedure, they forgot. They write at the beginning, because it looks very nice, all the people that are involved in the procedure. So they have a cert and they have the GDPR EU. And yet, when they start building their procedure, they just forgot to talk to this person. Should they be reporting to this cert? Should they be providing information, getting information, and so on and so forth? So the question is, the organization can ask itself, are these The ones that are not connected, are they supposed to be in my procedure? And if they are, who is supposed to be providing them information, or who is supposed to be interacting with them? In simulations we've carried out for smart cities here in Israel, political organizations where heads of departments are part of the crisis management team, we have found out that 38% of pressure on decision makers is created by people that don't have to be in the procedure, but were there for political reasons. That means that managing the crisis, just by taking out these people from the procedure, you could reduce the level of stress of decision makers by 38%. Now, that's a huge thing, because these people, once in a crisis and in the crisis management team, will not shut up. Everyone has to show their worth, and they will make noise. The second thing the system does, it's showing us who is supposed to be talking to who is receiving information, who is getting information. So you can ask yourself, should my CEO really be talking to the marketing director, or should the information be flowing in two directions? And you can go, player by player. And the third aspect is the system identifies the most influential participants or stakeholders. So it's telling us that according to the procedure we have built for a data breach event, our senior vice president of marketing is the most influential player. I would have expected it would be either a chief information security officer, or maybe if the organization had one, the crisis management, the head of the crisis management team, or so on and so forth. They built a whole process around the person, and the organization can ask itself. So if I see that my senior vice president is so influential, and I don't think it should happen, I can go back to the flowchart and see what decisions they're making and what information they're providing to decision makers, and maybe move some of these influential sections to someone else. Maybe you shouldn't be making these decisions. Maybe they should be given to someone else. The third aspect is the system allows me to see that should this process flow as expected, according to your procedure, what would be the levels of stress on the different participants? And as long as it's colored blue, it means that the level of stress is reasonable. And when the level of stress starts getting elevated, it will turn yellow. And if it's unreasonable, it'll be red. And we are able to say why. It tells us that our CISO will be at an elevated level of stress. He will be receiving a mark, a score. This is a score, 16. And 100% out of the stress will exist because he has to talk to huge or large amounts of people, provide a lot of information to a lot of players, which is unreasonable at this point in time. With a simulation we had with the CEO of an organization, they built a procedure where everything flows to the CEO in a very short time frame. He was supposed to make 11 decisions within a 5-minute time frame based on huge amounts of data and information that he would receive from other stakeholders. The system colored it red. This means that before you simulate, you'll see that you have built your process in a way which is neither effective nor efficient. Now, if I see there's stress level is here, and it's because of information or decisions that I need to make, all I need to go back to is the flow and drag and drop maybe one decision or two decisions, either move them in the time frame or give them to someone else. So the system allows me to optimize my procedure, see the right people are making decisions. We are training the right people. The levels of stress are correct. The ways that the information is flowing and the right people are in the system. Once I'm convinced that I have a good process that I can work with, the system is automatically creating the tabletop. These are the information that will be provided to the different stakeholders when playing the simulation. On simulation day, people connect virtually through a password, link. They can do it through their mobile computers. There are simulations where everyone sits in the same room with tabletops. There are simulations where they work from their workplace as they would in a usual day. And there are simulations where they do it from home. We've had simulations where in Australia, people are sitting in their pajamas and managing different types of crisis. By the way, as it would happen in real life, we've even had a simulation with one of our American partners where the CISO was on board an aircraft. As long as you are connected and you wouldn't work as in real life, then you're able to participate in this simulation. Any questions up till now? Very quiet group, huh? Okay,
It's fantastically interesting. I'm literally quiet because I'm really impressed. So
I was going to say, Richard, I could see that. I like body language. I could see that you were engaged with this. I mean, I imagine that you're watching this and you're thinking, you're saying, well, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. I think you understand why I like this stuff.
Yeah. Funny enough, we're actively involved with a few of our clients involved in their emergency preparedness and response, and we got really well received training. But genuinely, I can see this being another level again. This is, I can see the clients loving it. So yeah.
It also allows you to see that the process you have written for a client really works. A lot of the times, consultants are preparing procedures, and until there's a crisis or a tabletop, they don't know if the procedure really is effective. And sometimes, and I'm saying this, less from an academic or the right way to do things. Sometimes the procedure changes per the client because of their political internal reasons or structure. At the end of the day, they're the client. So you need to make sure that it's working for that client specifically and not something generic.
Yeah, and what I like about this is clearly it's continuously adjustable. So if the organization changes at any times, or they realize that they're going off down a different avenue, or anything changes really, their strategy, their business layout, their personnel, their roles, is continuously adjustable. And I like that, the fact that you can test it on here before you even put it into place to try it as an exercise. It's
exactly.
clever.
Yeah. Exactly. And a lot of these clients, they're carrying out small tabletops for different departments. We sell it as a license. We'll talk later about the commercial part, but each department can have its own tabletop, and then you can connect them together for a larger war game at the end of the year. So there are many different ways, to strategically implement this, but let me show you how it works. This is the dashboard with a game controller. For those of you that have ever played Dungeons and Dragons, it's similar. We have a game controller that's going to manage the system. On our right-hand side are all the messages that are waiting to be played, but I can create whatever I want in real time. I can add players, I can create new messages. This is a structure that in many cases changes because each organization reacts differently in real time. So I'm going to just, cut down the time here. I'm going to send a message. So I send message number 5. As the game controller, on the left-hand side, I can see everything that's happening, all the messages that are going to be sent. I can start seeing in real time. There's an 8-second buffer, up to 8 seconds, sorry, so I can see the interactions. On the player side, it will look something like this. So it's a very dramatic video. I am the player now. I'm the CEO. This is the user interface. I received an email. It looks exactly like an email system. I'll show you in a few minutes another user interface. So I have my inbox. As I get messages, you will see the number here could change. It shows me those that I have not read. So I receive a message from my CIO that says that Microsoft itself has been hacked. This is not my company. Now I can either create a new message, talk to someone, I can reply to whoever sent it to me, reply to or forward. It works exactly like an email system. This means that if organizations, when they use it for the first time, players, the learning curve is 4.5 minutes. That's the time it takes to get someone working for the first time on a system. They either interact through their emails or through chats. So I'll show you later other user interfaces. So I can chat with my chairman of the board. I can write whatever I want. I can create a group chat people as I would do in WhatsApp. I could have them predefined groups. There are a lot of things you can do here. So I'm gonna create a new message here, and I'm gonna write to my, the spokesperson, just so we know, and write help me. And I'm going to connect this to an event, which is a cyber attack, because I want to know that the player knows what he's dealing with. I'm just writing help me, okay? And send the message. Exactly like an email system, the message now will appear in my outbox. The game controller will see it in real life. The color indicates that at this point, this is the most influential player. This is our patent. We have 8 levels of influence. We can show the player. So we can start seeing what's happening. We can see the messages as they start appearing. There are different analytics, but I'll show you a full simulation of how this works. The information a player receives can be from videos that I just showed you, whatever you want, even live feed. We've carried out press conferences through the system. We can connect through, if you have Zoom, Teams, or SignalWire, which is our preferred vendor that we work with, and so on and so forth. I can record messages, so it would simulate. It's working only in English at this point. We're now opening it for other languages. So I can record messages as well and send it as a recorded message so they can talk to each other. We are now in our third module also connecting this to real-time applications that work on voice over IP. So if people tell us that they only talk on the phone and we want to do a war game and less a tabletop, we are also capable of doing that, but that's the next step. So that's all the information that's flowing in the system in real time. And the more information that flows in, the more stress the players start to go through. I'm going to go into a simulation, which is an earthquake one, played a long time ago, but there's something else. It's very interesting, so I'll show it to you. This was built for this management institute by a consultant that works with the UN, and it's provided to third world countries. Also, I've cleaned out the details here on the earthquake process. So you have the prime minister, spokesperson, law enforcement agency, and so on and so forth. They had a very long procedure, by the way, 43 pages, which is the guidelines for managing this. So it's a long, long process of what everyone is expected to do. And let me show you a little of the simulation itself. So you can see on the right-hand side all the messages that were supposed to be sent. Some were not sent because in the process they have a what if, another path, and they took the other path, so not all the messages were really sent. On the left-hand side, we can see all the interactions between the players as they managed this event, which was a 2-hour event, if I'm not mistaken. And let me show you a little of the analytics. The system starts with a statistical analysis, who does what and how much. So you can see that the prime minister was very active. We can do it per event. So I can see at the beginning, when there was only seismic activity, you can see that the prime minister was very active. The Ministry of Health was chatting a lot, by the way. And then I can see what happened during the earthquake itself. Look, and the moment the earthquake started, how the Ministry of Health became much more active than the other participants. I can examine per event. I can examine all the events. We see what was the expected level of behavior. So in the expected level of behavior, the most influential player was supposed to be the prime minister. Now, this is critical. We do not judge. I don't think the prime minister should be the most influential player in an earthquake. It'll probably be the emergency management agency, FEMA, whoever is in charge of managing the events in the country. Yet they built a procedure where the prime minister was the most influential. In reality, what happened is something totally different. The most influential player was the Ministry of Transport. On the second level, we have the Prime Minister and the Emergency Management Agency. On the third level, we have the Ministry of Health. Now, the Ministry of Health was very active, but less influential. So I can say who's very active and who's influential. The reason this player, the Ministry of Transport, was the most influential is that they showed a little initiative. When they saw that no one was working according to the procedure, the Ministry of Transport jumps in, starts giving orders, shows initiative. Now, I can come over to your organization, David, and tell everyone what to do. The reality is probably no one would do it. In this event, everyone reacted. So the person jumped in, told them what to do, and they reacted, which made him the most influential person. Now, we are very careful not to use the word leadership. Maybe others would use the term leadership here. We do not use it because we do not want to insult anyone. So we're very careful in the terminology. We call it the best player, MVP. Now, this was played in the morning, in the AM in 2018, one of our first simulations. I can show you the same scenario, same client, different government, played it in the afternoon. Look at the real interaction map. Same scenario, exact same story. Here we have a user, the interaction map is very, very similar to the expected one. This is an organization that saw its procedures and nearly acted identically. By the way, there is no difference in the levels of influence. You have one person, the prime minister, at the highest level of influence, and all the rest are at the lowest levels. So you don't have different levels of influence here. This is a very totalitarian country. If I give you the name, you'd understand. You know, it's one prime minister and all the rest are at a very low level and just yes sir, no sir, and do what they're told, do what they're told to do. So that's the interaction map, and it shows you real life. We can also look at the heat map. Our heat map shows us that there was an expected level of pressure. Everything was blue, no level of pressure, nothing out of the ordinary. But you can see how out of focus it was to real life. The moment the simulation started, very, very quickly, we see that the law enforcement agency, for some reason, and the prime minister were under high levels of stress. You can see that the emergency management agency was also under levels of stress, but very uninfluential. We can say why the stress exists. Is it because of a lot of decisions, a lot of information I get, a lot of information I give? Here we also analyze the words that are used in each email. So on one hand, we're able to say which words change behavior. We had a simulation for a large pharmaceutical company where one of the managers used Hebrew slang, translated it into English. In Hebrew, we say, we are at war. It means move quickly. It means start moving your behind. But he translated into English, we are at war, with 3 exclamation marks and sent it to the American office. Now, not only that, but he wrote, gentlemen, we are at war. Now, the office on the other side is all women, receiving an email that says, gentlemen, we are at war. And we are at war has a totally different meaning. So we are able to show which is that one message, that one word, that one thing that changed the behavior on the other side. So a company can also see what are the right and appropriate words it should use. This is the sentiment. It shows us what they were focusing on. They understand it's an emergency and a situation. You see very little use of verbs and directive verbs. If I want to know who said a certain word, let's say hospitals, I press on the word and I know who said it, when they said it, how they said it. In the United States, police departments are using it for active shooter events. Who is the first one that used the term active shooter? And then they can analyze the 5 or 10 minutes before. So when they made that decision to use that word, did they have enough information and was it the right information? And some of our clients are building their procedures based on this. When the system identifies gaps between real and expected behaviors, it allows the system to ask questions. Either they can be built while in the simulation, it's a 10-second process, or pre-simulation, when you have experience and you know what you want to ask. So they were asked here, there was a gap between the real behavior and the expected behavior. So they were asked, how would you advise the citizens regarding the evacuations? The right answer per their procedure was number 5. 2 departments, offices answer something else. Now you can either stop the simulation, open this for discussion. You can drill deep down, find out why they're saying it. Here we usually go and try to find the root cause of this gap. Today we know that in 38% of the events, managers that are not working according to their expected behavior, it's because they do not understand the situation. They don't know they're in a crisis. Only 23% it's because they don't know their procedure. By the way, when the procedure is up to 5 pages long, there's a high level of correlation. We see a decline in the level of compliance to the procedure from page number 6. 18% don't work according to their procedures because they think they know better. By the way, sometimes they're right. The procedure was not good. On the other hand, I'll tell you that out of those 18%, 96.4 are male above the age of 45. So we can start seeing behaviors of different groups and therefore are able to start predicting pre-simulation the level of compliance. All of this data is created in real time. At the end of the simulation, when you go into your after event debriefing or hot wash or however you want to call it, we have chapters. These can be customized per client. This client wanted it, a chapter that says all the preparations they made, all the game information, how many of each type was there, how much they participated, so on and so forth. and what we call a diagnostic assessment, which is the comparison of behavior of each one of our analytics and the real behavior, and allowing observers or automatic insights as they come up to be written in. I've erased these for the demos because they already, it would show which country it is, but all these insights would automatically appear here, allowing the client to analyze it. If you want to see everything that happened, all the raw data within the system exists, all the messages, who said, when they said, how they said it. It can be exported for those consultants that need a long report, because sometimes clients pay in as to the heaviness of the document they receive. So you can make, you can give this as well. There can be 1,000 messages here. It's an Excel document, so it can be added to the report, or it can be accessible per the system. And of course, you can search and look for whatever you want. One last thing is, this is the new user interface. It is less a emulation of an email system, but more of a desktop. As you can see, different languages exist. Thai, yeah, there are other languages as well we have today. So we have all the information, people could access it. During the simulation, we have this in the other user interface as well. A player is asked, what do you think is the biggest challenge of this day? Let's say, I don't know, I'm always hungry. So I'm hungry and I connected to an event. The system asks me, what are your solutions to this challenge, so I can eat, right? And I can sleep. I can add other ones as well. And then it asks me, okay, so what are you going to do? Eat or sleep? I can choose which one I'm going to sleep. I can save it. I can share it with other participants here. I have no other challenges, and then I can resume the simulation. This allows us to understand at each point in the simulation, where we want, of course, if people are understanding the event as it is. Do they know what the challenges are, comparing between different players, what solutions they have. Many organizations are surprised in the solutions. They'll see the one that is written in the procedure, but maybe additional ideas. So they're also learning from the participants. Before they listen to each other, they think and they write it down, and then the decisions. We have a social networking application. It looks very much like Facebook. It used to be SM until we understood what SM is. So now we've turned it into social network and not social media. So I can post things, share them exactly as I would on Facebook. We have breaking news, and the players are requested, they can share it. And also if they've read it, it will disappear, that specific event from the breaking news on the desktop. We see younger age groups preferring this one, because you have a lot of things popping up from mail and breaking news and social network, and you have to deal with a lot of things at the same time. And we see age groups above the age of 45 still preferring the old, the traditional user interface. So that's something that, as a challenge, we're going to have to deal with in the next 12 to 24 months. So I'm going to shut up now. I've talked too much, I think, and open this up for any questions or issues that you have.
What this is about is, from my perspective, is modeling a complex organization. It doesn't matter what the organization is. It doesn't matter what they do. It's about complexity. And therefore, if it's an airport, or if it's a transport system, a logistical system, or critical national infrastructure, or major city management, or Dubai 2020, or Tokyo Olympics, it doesn't make any difference. It's a complex organization. And the greater, the more complexity you have, the more distanced people become. So the likelihood is that within a complex organization, the people writing the crisis management programs are not the people managing them. The people managing them don't have any input into that, because they're in different countries or different departments, et cetera, et cetera. So what I've done is I've taken, and what's nice is what we do exactly matches what Dotan has talked about. You'll see there's absolute match over, and it's because we have a similar understanding of some of the challenges. So I'm just going to bring this up. So basically speaking, it's always about communication. We know that. But of course, what we've just seen, that's not an event. That's part of a process. You don't start from there and you don't finish from there. It is part of a continuum. And if you don't, many people seem not to understand what that continuum is. Because of course, training and exercising and testing is incredibly expensive. not because of the cost of the consultant, which is a cost of business, but it's the time of the people involved. If you've got 20, 30, 50, 60 people involved for half a day, you really want to make sure that they are maximizing the benefit, because if they don't, next time you come back and say, no, I tried that last month, didn't like it, I'm not turning up. So you're losing the support of the organization. And so what we do is when we talk to organizations about that development process, we say you have to understand what your development process is. And basically you have two parts of the process. And the first thing is your risk register. You've got to know what your risk register is. And to a large extent, the reasons that people fail is because either something is not on their risk register, and you say, well, why it's not on the risk register? Or it is on their risk register, but they don't understand what it means. And the example we give is that the UK risk register for 2017 had global pandemic on it, which had a high likelihood of 4 out of 5 in the next 5 years. But the UK's official estimation of deaths from a global pandemic hitting the UK was 250 people. That was their official pandemic projection. We're now at 125,000 people. So clearly it is that you do not understand what your risk register is. Second thing is that if you have a risk register, what is it you're supposed to do? The things that Dotan talked about, what is it you're supposed to do? What is your procedures, your protocols, your frameworks, et cetera, et cetera? And once you've identified those, you now have training. You have to make sure that people know what they are. If they don't know what they are the day before stuff happens, they're not going to suddenly learn when something happens. You don't learn to dance the day before the ball, okay? You don't get fit the day before the race. And so most organizations, they don't get this bit right. And either they don't understand the process or they don't have the time or the energy to put it in place. Once you've done training, and that says, do you know what to do? Then you do exercising. And exercising basically brings different people together and says, well, you're not trying to tell people what to do. They should know what to do. But you're trying to say, are we able to develop a capability through integration and collaboration, multi-agency in emergent processes? And there's a process to that as well. Dotan, I don't think that what you're doing is exercising. I would not call that exercising. I would call it testing. I think it's testing because it says exercising is slow. Exercising, you don't fail. Exercising is going through it and iterating it. A lot of it is about the discussion. Let's face it. It's about that, that facilitated discussion. I think what you're doing is testing. And once you've tested, what you then do is you validate and you say, okay, this is fit for purpose. We know what we're doing. We can sign off. But of course, validation is like your driving test. The day you get your driving test doesn't mean you're a good driver. And if you stop then, now that you have your driving, now you go out and you have to get experience on the road and in the motorway and in the rain and at night, et cetera, et cetera. And so what you need to do is you have to embed it and normalize it within the organization. Because if it is not part of your normalized processes, you can't suddenly do it in a crisis. Because at the end of the day, a crisis, a true crisis, is a rare event. Most people, it's once or twice in a lifetime. Now, there is absolutely nothing that we do in our lives that we get right the first time. Not riding a bicycle, not playing the piano, not baking a cake. And you can show somebody how to bake a cake, and you can show them the videos of how to bake a cake, and they can discuss baking a cake. The first time they bake a cake, it still doesn't work. So why do you expect people to get crisis management right when it may be the first time in their life they've ever had to do that? And there's basically nothing in their background that's got them ready for that. You look at government ministers for COVID. Most government ministers have not been prepared to manage COVID. You look at Houston, Texas. Most people in Houston, Texas are not prepared for that. Okay, so that's that. And then we can go into that deeper and deeper. That's part of the process. I want to now come to communication, which is, of course, what everything that Dotan's talking about. And the principal cause of failure in crisis management is always transfer of information. And it's not just transfer of information, it's transfer of complex information. And I think any organization that says, okay, how good are we at transfer of complex information? That's a good question to ask. But that is what the lawyers would say is necessary, but not sufficient. Because it is not just a transfer of complex information, it's a transfer of complex information. And this is what I like about Dotan's things, because it brings it into play under pressure. That's the issue. And especially within many of these organizations, you're working in a language, your first responder may not have English as a first language, or you may be working in a language which is not yours. And that becomes incredibly present, because that inability to manage the transfer of pressure, as Dotan says, the first question is never, what shall we do? The first question is, does anybody know what the hell has just happened? What has just happened? And the second question is, what does that mean? What does that mean for us? And so, it's, as Dotan mentioned, it's sense making. Can somebody let me know what the hell's going on? I'm sure that all of us have asked, at some stage in our careers, it says, will somebody just tell me what the hell is going on here? But that's not sufficient either. And this is where our models and Dotan's models fit over perfectly, because it's a transfer of complex information under pressure between multiple stakeholders. And that's then completing our picture. And this is completely independent of what Dotan does. But what's lovely is it absolutely matches over what happens. And those stakeholders are both internal within your organization and external, and those critical gatekeepers and stakeholders which you have dependency on. And of course, they're not sitting there waiting for your phone call. They've got their own crises going on as well. So the likelihood is they're not going to pick up the phone anyway, because they've got their own crisis going on. So what happens now is we can actually take that, and as Dotan's done, and he takes it from his experience, I take it from academic work. And so we can look at what happens, we can map it. And this is the New York FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, in normal status. And what Dotan likes, I know, is because right at the bottom, on the right, is the president. And the basic message is, Mr. President, we're busy, please go away because we are busy, and we will let you know when you need something. And that is, again, completely independent of what Dotan was saying, but just shows you that this is the reality. But of course, this is normal status. This is on a Tuesday afternoon when everything's fine. The moment you go into triggered status, as soon as you go into triggered status, what's going to happen is that goes from that to that. And there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot prevent that happening. And that's what's going to happen. And the question is, well, can you manage that? Of course, the answer is no, you can't. You don't have the bandwidth to manage that. You don't have the resources. So immediately you're losing information, because of course you don't know what you don't know. And that is why, if you read any review of any crisis event, within the executive summary, out of the first 5 points in the executive summary, 2 will be, 1, the word overwhelming. It was overwhelming. That would always be the word that comes over. And if it's not overwhelming, it's not a crisis. And the second is, we lost communications. We failed, we lost our sense making. But of course, anybody who understands this will say, well, but you're only mapping the connectivity within your network. But you have external networks as well. So what we now need to go is go from triggered status to networked status and say, okay, what is your network? Not just people within your organization, because everybody within the organization is also a critical gatekeeper to an external network. And then we go to network status. And your 21 critical agencies in your FEMA agency have 1,236 agencies that are dependent on information for their decision making. They cannot make effective decisions because they do not know what's going on. And the question is not, the responsibility of the center is not to tell people what to do. That's one of the first signals of crisis management. You don't have time to tell people what to do. You've got to let them know what's going on. That's your job, to let them know what's going on. And if you can let them know what's going on, they know if they have to leave that building, or they know if they have, if the water's rising, etc., etc. So that's the bad news. That's the problem. And there's nothing you can do to avoid that. I mean, that is a reality. So the question is, okay, if that's the problem, are you going to bring us solutions? And the answer is, well, we can do our best. And this is the benefit of information management. And this is what Dotan and myself, we overlap 99.9%. Because if something happens, and it doesn't matter what happens, if something goes bang, and what the Americans would say now, you go right of bang, left of bang is preparation, right of bang is response. But as soon as you have that bang, you have 2 universal forces coming into play, which you cannot avoid. And the first is that one, is that red line. And basically what that red line at the beginning, as you can see, it rises very, very, very steeply, and then it flattens out. That is basically decision making. You have to make decisions at the beginning. Do we close down? Do we go into lockdown, or do we go for herd immunity? Do we close the airport? Do we not close the airport? Do we lock down the school? Do we not lock down the school? Do we make an announcement? Do we not make an announcement? Do we go public? Do we not go public? These are big, you think of Boeing 737 MAX, the plane went down. And what was their decision? We keep flying, my friends. And at the same time, you have an absolute mirror power. And that is information. At the beginning, you have no information. And after a while, you start bringing information in. And at some stage, and then it starts coming in, at some stage where those lines crosses, you go, I think I know what's happening. I think I know what's going on. Now, that's not perfect, and it will be emergent, but you feel, okay, right, I think I understand what's happening here, more or less. And at that stage, you can say we have informed decision-making. Now, it's not perfect, but it's informed decision-making. We can sort of get an understanding of what technically would be called sense-making. And what Dotan is talking about and what I'm talking about is very, very simply, if through everything that we are doing and working with organizations, we can help take that black line, that information gathering line, and we can bring that forward. We can say, okay, let's manage information better. Transfer of complex information under pressure between multiple stakeholders. Let's try and have code work. Let's use the same terminology. Let's have an understanding of what a major incident is, or a critical incident, or a crisis is, because if we just use, we are now in a category 3, for example. If everybody knows what category 3 is, you have a shared understanding, more or less. And if we can do that, then we can clearly demonstrate the differentiator in informed decision-making because of the benefit. And that is that simple. There is no magic and there's no voodoo. But I think, Dotan, that puts sort of our sort of context around what you do. Yeah. So that's me done. Dotan, any thoughts?
So that looks very interesting, and it fits in exactly with what we're talking.
Exactly.
It's like a glove in hand here.
It does.
It's only a question of, okay, so now what and how do we?
Okay, so let's dance. Okay, so let's dance. Now let's have to choose the music.